Catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.
Hello, welcome to Back to Base on Africa Tech Radio, and it is an amazing day today. And if your day isn't looking up yet, it is not too late, because Back to Base, which is a founders podcast, is the perfect elixir for your ailment. Every episode of Back to Base on Africa Tech Radio features awesome people who started from scratch and built something incredible. And we're talking to entrepreneurs who turned their big ideas into real life successes. My name is Lillian, and this is Africa Tech Radio. So, our guest today is a special one, and of course, he is Taha Jiwaji. He is a genius behind BEEM, and I really want to know how he got the genius ideas that turned BEEM from a simple thought into a total game changer. We're going to be having a conversation with him to know all about him. Hello, Taha.
Hey, thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you very much for joining us again. So, I read about how you started at your parents' computer shop in Tanzania. So how did it lead you to start BEEM?
Yeah, thanks. The journey of BEEM really started back about over 10 years ago, when my parents' business, and they had a computer shop in a busy marketplace in Dar es Salaam. And their challenge was really how to communicate with their customers. And so I was trying to help them figure out what mediums they can use, and we landed on SMS as a channel because students were just taking on mobile phones. Remember, this is the era of Nokias, before smartphones came about, and SMS was the way to chat and talk at that time.
I'm just curious, right? If you were not doing this, what do you think you'd be doing?
My previous life before BEEM, I was doing technology consulting in the US, and I think I was getting bored of that at that time. So I would probably have ended up working at a startup, because I needed a fast-paced environment where my inputs would have been valued.
What is your take on people who do a job that they are clearly sad about? They are clearly sad doing that job, but they are doing it anyway. What is your take?
I think there may be situations in life where someone needs to just do a job that they need to make their ends meet. But in the long run, the values of that company and the culture of that company need to align with your individual skills and your individual values and personality, for you to be very productive and you to enjoy the work that you're doing. So I think those are some very important things. And in fact, that's something that we're currently working on, really showcasing our values to our people and making sure that everyone aligns to those values.
Let's talk about challenges, right? What kind of challenge have you faced while running BEEM, especially when you started and then now, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Over time, we've had to face so many different kinds of challenges, right? So in the beginning, it was a lot about customers and partners taking us seriously, because we were a very young startup with no track record, and people would not take us seriously either in terms of the solution we were providing or in terms of partnering with us. Over time, the challenges have maybe grown and changed. I think we've had a lot of challenges with people and kind of making sure we have the right kinds of people with the right skill sets to ensure we get the right people on board to meet our kind of strategic objectives and goals. So I think there are a lot of challenges around people and changing culture and mindset of customers.
All right. So you mentioned some challenges that you faced. That is the fact that internet was not a thing. But now internet is a thing. There are more apps, more social media platforms springing up by the second. So how was it easy? Was it easy or difficult for you to make that transition?
I think the transition for businesses has been slower, right? Consumers have been faster to adopt technology, right? For businesses, has been a bit slower, and that has given us some time to build up new solutions to new challenges that businesses are facing. And that's why we've launched a new platform now that allows businesses to communicate and serve customers on WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Google Business Messages, and all of these chat channels. So we've been able to progress with the technology and keep up with the more recent challenges that businesses are facing, that their customers have now moved to these chat and social channels.
So for the fact that you have started, you are successfully running a company, right? I'm sure you have one or two ideas why you think a lot of people who are starting up companies, some of these mistakes, the major mistakes that they make.
And let's just say from our experience, right? I think I was studying and then working in the US, and I moved back with this idea. I built the prototype and moved back to Tanzania to start this business. And in some ways, it was maybe a bit naive to kind of expect, a US kind of concept to work immediately in an African context. Right? So I think that's a lesson that, a lot of people, particularly in the diaspora, that are looking to come back, or folks who've studied outside and feel like there's a better way to do things somewhere else, and that can be replicated on the continent. It's not always black and white, right? And it's not always something that you copy paste. There's many nuances, there's many cultural differences, and in the way businesses behave, in the way consumers behave. And it's not just for Africa in general, right? It's very different per country. The perception or acceptance of that product may be completely different. So that's something that we've learned over time, that you shouldn't take anything for granted.
When you said that people in diaspora, when they come to a certain country, they also, when they go back home, think about bringing the ideologies from those countries back home, forgetting the dynamic nature of the market. So can you give me like a specific example of something you have faced?
So, like I mentioned, that when we first started the business, we had an SMS messaging service for businesses, but we also had an SMS marketing service, right? And this marketing service was copied from, like Groupon in the West, right, or in the US, a service called Groupon, where you would sign up to this platform to receive offers, and based on your interests. And you would tell them your name, your age, your gender, etc., your interests, and then they would send you specific offers that match your profile. We didn't copy the group part, but this matchmaking part we copied. And this concept was very kind of a US concept, and it didn't translate at all directly, right? So that's something that we learned from in the process. And also the education piece that I spoke about was a big component of something that had to change. Right? Whereas you expect some of these services to be self-explanatory, and people will understand and adopt these technologies, but there's a real hesitation to try new things at times, especially for businesses. And so that was also different.
And of course, a lot of other people in different countries would not know this, because I've seen videos where you ask them about some specific countries in Africa, and they'll tell you, "Oh, Africa, isn't Africa a country?" But seeing as Africa is made up of many countries, and each of those countries have their own specific and dynamic way of life, right? How does BEEM adapt to the unique needs of each country in Africa?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we work across a lot of countries, up to 25 countries at the moment on the continent, right? And so we have to be very mindful of these differences at any point in time. I think the best way some of the ways that we've found that have worked are definitely going on the ground, right? So we spend a lot of time on the ground in these markets to really understand nuances and why certain things will work or would not work. based on the geography, based on the culture, based on the language, and so many different factors, which you can't understand sitting on a computer screen, 1,000 miles away. It's just not practical or possible, right, to absorb all of that. Secondly, we work with folks on the ground, local staff and consultants, to help us really understand the nuances of these markets and speak the language and tell us that this is right, this is wrong, this will work, this won't. So these are very, you would think common sense things, but a lot of times startups think that, we can work remotely and kind of make things work, right, from afar. So it's a lot of these fundamental things that need to do and continue doing. And even then things go wrong, right? And things move at their own pace. But at least you have context. You have context.
People tend to forget about the grassroots when they are campaigning for, political roles, whether they are selling to people. We forget about the people at the grassroots, and that is always a huge mistake. And obviously, that is not a mistake that BEEM makes. Yeah. I also read that you used to be Bongo. Why the change? Did you just change the name?
That's a very good question. So when we first started the business, we were called Bongo Live. Like I mentioned, we were an SMS marketing service initially, and it was Bongo Live had a very entertainment and marketing connotation or a vibe to it, and so we stuck with that name. But as we've evolved as a business, we've moved away from the marketing side a lot and focused on B2B, very enterprise kind of services, right? And that name, Bongo Live, didn't really resonate with our customers. And it's also a very Tanzanian, East African kind of name. As we were working in other markets outside East Africa, folks didn't understand this. So there were quite a few reasons, and we said, now is the time to change. And it took us a really long time to find a new name. But we kind of made the effort, and it's really worked out. We've got a lot of positive feedback from customers, partners, that they really like the new name, the new branding, and it's even re-energized our employees.
So what does BEEM mean? Does it have any meaning?
So BEEM, it's derived from beam, like the light beam. And we were playing with a lot of themes, and some of the things that people know us for or know BEEM for are speed, knowledge, connectivity and communication, and coverage, being available in many places. And light, kind of as a concept fit that theme of meeting all of these things. So we were playing around with that theme, and then that's why BEEM came up, and then put a twist on it.
All right, that's good. So it's time for us to go back to base a bit further. I'm talking about your background. You told me that you studied in the US. What did you study?
I studied computer engineering and business. So I have 2 degrees.
Oh, wow. So when you were younger, before you even started helping your father out, first of all, how young were you when you started, helping out your parents in the computer shop? How young were you?
I was 22, basically, around 21, 22.
So before that time, did you ever imagine yourself found a company? Did you think about this thing when you were younger, or was it something that you thought about after?
I always had the kind of idea that I wanted to start a business or do my own thing, right? Whether it would be a business or not, I wanted to be independent and do my own thing. I think that was just my personality. But also, I've grown up around the family business. So even as a kid, we always spent a lot of time at my parents' shop and kind of understanding how business works. So it was always there that I could do something like that. And also, I think in college, we experimented with a startup as well. So we actually, 3 of us got together and started a startup called Campus SMS. You'll see the theme of SMS continuing, right? But basically, it was a service that let students get updates or reminders about events. So as a student, we didn't want to miss the free lunches and pizza, and because without, we kept forgetting about events that were happening. Because remember, at that time, the only way to get a reminder was to get an email. For that email, there was no smartphone, so you had to go sit on a PC, check your email, and see if there was an email that you forgot about. So we said, why not try this SMS service to remind people or remind students like us? So we got some traction, but by the time we graduated, it kind of fizzled out.
That's an amazing thing. So now let's go into where you see BEEM in the next, say, 5-10 years, because you see the technological space is changing, like I mentioned, by the second. So looking ahead, where do you see BEEM heading in the next few years?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And in fact, we're doing a program right now called the Stanford Seed Program that is helping us actually map out our growth strategy and which direction we should be taking. So I think for us, we've grown organically and we've grown quite well. What we want to really do now over the next decade is really expand our footprint in terms of where our customers are. We already work with a lot of mobile operators across the country, but we want to work with more businesses across the continent. And so we've just launched an office in Kenya with a sales team, which we didn't have before, to kind of address that and test out that model. And if that works, we will continue to expand in that fashion to more countries, to be closer to customers and serve them in a deeper fashion. And so, we were looking at markets in West Africa, potentially, and Southern Africa, and potentially also serving global customers beyond African markets. So, can we look at the Middle East? Can we look at North America?
All right, your journey from a computer shop to a mobile services pioneer is really interesting. So what advice would you give to other young entrepreneurs who aspire to create solutions, innovative solutions such as yours?
Whenever I talk to young entrepreneurs or students and such, I always say that there's no shortcuts, right? So things take time. Whatever you're trying to do, whatever project or startup, things take time, right? And so you have to be patient and devote the time and the energy and the dedication to really see things through. And eventually something will happen from that, right? Even if you fail, failure is good. You will learn from that failure and something new will come out of that. But often, a lot of times, I see folks that want to get results fast, right? They want to see something happen in 6 months, 12 months. They want to jump jobs or jump experiences, and it doesn't. Sure, in the short term, it might pay off, but in the long run, it doesn't. So I always encourage folks to stick with things and see things through before calling it quits, right? And learn from failure. Failure is good, and continue learning. We're still failing till today. There's things that we haven't gotten right and we keep doing wrong, but we keep learning and experimenting and trying new ways to solve it.
How do you stay motivated? How do you keep yourself motivated?
I get demotivated a lot as well. So it's a good question. How do you stay motivated? I think it comes in phases, right? So there are times when you're not as motivated at all, and then there's times when you're very motivated. I think I've learned to pace myself. I think I've learned to pace myself in the sense that you have to set routines and balance your lifestyle, and it's the fundamentals, right? Like getting sleep and getting exercise, eating well, and balancing these things out and not overdoing it, because that just leads to burnout and getting demotivated. So I think I found that balancing myself in terms of how much I'm working on something helps a lot with staying motivated in the long run. And I also like to talk to a lot of young people and go to events and talk to a lot of people to get re-energized, because once you listen to new ideas, different ways that people are tackling different problems, it kind of motivates you again to kind of start looking at your own problems in a different way and get re-energized.
All right. Is there any other thing you want to add before we go?
No, I think for listeners, we didn't get a chance to kind of just talk about what we do currently. So BEEM as a business enables businesses to interact and transact with their customers on the mobile phone using SMS, USSD, airtime, and chat. And we really help. Our mission is really to enable businesses to leverage technology through innovative products that help them create lasting relationships with their customers, whether it's for sales, customer service, creating customer experiences, or security or authenticating customers. There are different use cases where we enable businesses to interact with their customers. So definitely try out our platform. It's at BEEM.Africa. We work across about 25 African markets, can help businesses across all of those markets.
All right. It's been really nice having a chat with you. Thank you very much for joining us today.
All right. Thank you very much, Lillian. Very nice talking to you, and thank you for having me on your show.
Likewise. All right. You're listening to Africa Tech Radio. My name is Lillian, and we just had a conversation with Taha Jiwaji, and he is the founder, CEO of BEEM Africa. Check them out on their website. It is very easy to spot. My name is Lillian. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.